My name is Carmela Martinez. I'm 32, a single mother with 2 children, Emma and Lucas, who mean the world to me. For years, I had dedicated myself entirely to taking care of everyone else. My kids, my family, even my job. Always giving, always sacrificing, never asking for anything in return. It was my role, my duty. But somewhere along the way, I began to feel invisible, unappreciated, and forgotten, especially by the people who should have been the first to recognize my efforts, my own family. It was at my mother's birthday party when everything came to a head. I had spent hours getting ready for her celebration. I made sure my children were looking their best, brushed their hair, and explained to them, again, that they couldn't attend Grammy's party. My mother had clearly stated it was an event for adults only, and I, ever the rule follower, respected that. But when we arrived, I was blindsided. "Mom, I don't understand," I said, staring at the empty seats where my kids should have been sitting at my mother's New Jersey home. "You specifically told me this was a grown-ups-only party." My voice carried confusion, and as I looked around, that confusion turned to disbelief. In walked my brother Michael with his wife and their 3 children. They were all dressed up and carrying perfectly wrapped presents. My mother's face lit up at their arrival, and she rushed to embrace her grandchildren. "Grammy!" they squealed in delight. My heart sank. There I was, standing with my children back home with a babysitter. I had honored my mother's wishes, but Michael's kids were being lavished with attention. "Oh, Carmela," my mother said, noticing my expression. "Michael's kids are different. They're special. I'm sure you understand." But I didn't understand. Not at all. My children, Emma, who was 8, and Lucas, who was 6, were just as special, just as worthy of celebrating with their grandmother. "They're not different," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside. "They're all your grandchildren." My brother, Michael, smirked slightly as he adjusted his designer tie. "Come on, sis. You know your kids can be a handful. This way everyone can enjoy themselves." A handful? Because Emma sometimes got overwhelmed in crowded spaces, and Lucas preferred to express his enthusiasm through movement rather than sitting still. These were the qualities that made them uniquely wonderful, yet here I was, being told they were too much. I stood up from the elegantly set dining room table, my untouched appetizer forgotten. The family photos on the walls seemed to mock me now, carefully curated images where Michael's family featured prominently, while mine appeared only in group shots, usually at the edges. "Where are you going?" my mother asked, already distracted by Michael's youngest showing her a drawing. "We haven't even had dinner yet." I picked up my purse, my mind already forming a plan. My kids deserved better than this, and suddenly I knew exactly how to give it to them. "I'm going to spend the evening with my children," I said, my voice clear and confident. "All of us should be where we're truly appreciated." As I walked out, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't called in years. Sometimes the universe has a way of providing exactly what you need when you need it. The drive home through the quiet New Jersey streets gave me time to reflect on the years of subtle exclusion my children had faced. It had started small. My mother forgetting to invite them to Sunday brunches, planning family events during their nap times when they were toddlers, always finding reasons why Michael's kids were easier to accommodate. I had made excuses for her behavior, always trying to shield Emma and Lucas from the pain of rejection. But maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe they needed to learn that when people don't appreciate you, you create your own joy elsewhere. As I pulled into our driveway, I looked again at the contact I'd found on my phone. Antonio DeMarco, Culinary Institute. Tony and I had gone to high school together. He'd gone on to become one of New Jersey's most celebrated young chefs, and his restaurant, Giardino, was always packed. My kids had been begging to go there after seeing his cooking videos online. I dialed his number, hoping he'd remember me. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Tony, it's Carmela Martinez from Ridgewood High," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Carmela! Oh my God! It's been forever. How are you?" The warmth in his voice brought tears to my eyes. "I'm okay," I said, then explained the situation. "I have a strange request. Are you at the restaurant tonight?" Tony listened without interrupting, then said something that made me smile for the first time that evening. "Bring them over right now. I have the perfect idea." I walked into the house to find Emma and Lucas sitting with their babysitter, Jessica, attempting to play board games but clearly downhearted. Emma's long dark hair was pulled back in her special occasion braid, the one she'd done herself, hoping until the last minute that Grammy would change her mind about the party. "Mom!" Lucas jumped up, his energy instantly returning. "You're back early. Did Grammy miss us?" The question broke my heart, but I wouldn't let them see my sadness. Instead, I grinned mysteriously. "How would you two like to go on an adventure?" Emma looked up cautiously. "What kind of adventure?" "Well," I said, pulling up one of Tony's cooking videos on my phone, "how would you like to meet this chef and maybe learn how to make something special in his kitchen?" Their eyes widened with excitement. "Really?" they gasped in unison. "Really?" I smiled. Sometimes, the best celebrations are the ones we create for ourselves. The lights of Montclair twinkled as we pulled up to Giardino. The restaurant's warm glow spilled onto the sidewalk, and through the windows we could see the busy dining room filled with happy patrons. Emma clutched her notebook, the one where she wrote down recipes from cooking shows, while Lucas bounced excitedly beside her. "Are we really going to cook in a real restaurant?" Emma asked, her earlier disappointment forgotten in the face of this new adventure. "That's the plan, sweetheart," I said, smoothing her carefully braided hair. "And you know what? You're already dressed perfectly for a special evening." Tony was waiting at the door, his chef's whites crisp and clean despite the dinner rush. His face broke into a huge smile when he saw us. "The Martinez family. Come in," he called. "Come in." He knelt down to Emma and Lucas's level. "I hear you two are interested in cooking." Lucas nodded enthusiastically. "I can make scrambled eggs all by myself," he boasted. "I've been learning about herbs," Emma added shyly, showing him her notebook. "I have a little garden on our windowsill." Tony's eyes lit up as he flipped through Emma's careful notes. "This is impressive. You know, I started just like you, growing herbs in my mom's kitchen when I was about your age." The evening continued, with the kids in awe as Tony led us through the kitchen, showing them the ins and outs of professional cooking. I watched as Emma and Lucas thrived in an environment where they were celebrated for their unique skills, not dismissed for their differences. The joy in their faces, the way they worked together, was everything I had longed to see. Later, Tony presented them with their very own junior chef aprons, embroidered with Giardino Junior Chef in gold thread. My heart swelled with pride as they put them on, their faces lit up with accomplishment. As they helped prepare a special dessert, tiramisu, Tony praised them both for their skills, gently guiding them to make the perfect creations. And when he suggested that their tiramisu be added to the restaurant's menu, to be called Emma and Lucas's Junior Chef Tiramisu, I saw something inside my kids bloom. Their talent was being recognized, their work celebrated. I couldn't help but think of how different this felt from my mother's party, how different it was from all the subtle rejection my kids had faced for years. Here, they were appreciated. Here, they had found a place to shine. This was the start of something new, not just for my children, but for me too. I realized that the best way to celebrate my kids was by creating our own traditions, our own community. We didn't need approval from those who didn't see us. We had everything we needed within ourselves. By the time we left the restaurant, Emma and Lucas had their names on the menu, and the promise of a future full of opportunities. We had created our own joy, our own celebration. And that, I thought, as I watched my kids, was everything. As we left the restaurant, the warmth of the night wrapped around us. The glow of the Montclair streetlights contrasted against the darkened sky, and I couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of pride. Emma and Lucas chattered excitedly, their voices filled with the joy of their adventure. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be, with the people who mattered most to me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Emma and Lucas eagerly participated in Tony's weekend junior chef program. The kitchen became our new tradition, a place where my children not only learned about cooking, but were celebrated for their individual gifts. Emma, with her delicate touch and passion for herbs, began to teach younger kids how to grow and use them in their cooking. Lucas, with his endless energy and enthusiasm, quickly became a natural entertainer. He loved demonstrating cooking techniques, his infectious spirit making math and science fun for the younger children as they measured ingredients. Meanwhile, Tony and I continued to expand the program. We worked together to create spaces in other restaurants around New Jersey where children of all learning styles could thrive. It was about more than cooking. It was about creating a community, a place where no child would feel excluded for being different. The program grew quickly, and soon there was a long waiting list. But even as the success of our new endeavor grew, the past still lingered. My phone would occasionally buzz with messages from my mother, who seemed to be trying to bridge the gap between us. She sent flowers after each class, but her words felt hollow. "I'm proud of you," she'd say, "but I wish you'd come back to the family, to the traditions." Her version of pride was laced with guilt. She wanted me to apologize for stepping out, for finding my own way. One day, after receiving another text from my mother, I sat down with Emma and Lucas at our kitchen table. It was Sunday morning, and the scent of fresh-baked bread filled the air. Emma had spent the afternoon making an herb-infused loaf, while Lucas experimented with various toppings. "Mama," Emma said, her voice hesitant as she set her notebook down, "do you think Grammy will ever understand?" I looked at her, the weight of the question hitting me harder than I expected. I thought about my mother's disappointment in me, how she viewed my choices, how she saw my refusal to conform as a betrayal. "I don't know, sweetheart," I replied honestly, pushing the emotions down. "But what I do know is that we've created something special. We've built something that celebrates all of us, our strengths and our passions. That's what really matters." Lucas, who had been busy spreading honey on his toast, looked up at me with a big grin. "And we're making it better every day, right, Mama?" I smiled, my heart full. "Right, baby, we are." And just like that, the ache of rejection faded into the background, replaced by the warmth of the life we were building together. The success of the junior chef program, the joy in Emma's and Lucas's faces, the pride in their accomplishments, it was all enough. A few weeks later, I received a call from a local news outlet asking for an interview about the success of the program. The interview was going to be televised, and they wanted to feature Emma and Lucas. I agreed, of course, and we spent the next few days preparing. Emma was nervous, but excited to share her love for herbs, and Lucas was already practicing his chocolate garnishing skills in the kitchen. The day of the interview, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as I watched them prepare. They were no longer just children trying to fit into someone else's mold. They were young chefs, each carving out their own path, As the cameras rolled, Emma talked about the importance of using fresh ingredients and the joy she found in her herb garden. Lucas, bouncing with energy, demonstrated how to make a chocolate garnish. It was an interview that showcased their uniqueness, their enthusiasm, and their love for cooking. It was the story they deserved to tell. The next day, after the interview aired, my phone buzzed non-stop. Messages poured in from parents, teachers, and even strangers praising the program and my children. But what stood out the most was the message from my mother. "I saw the interview, Carmela," she wrote, "and I realized something. Maybe I've been wrong. Maybe I haven't been as supportive as I should have been. I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of Emma and Lucas." I stared at the message, the words a bittersweet mix of regret and acknowledgement. It wasn't the apology I had hoped for, but it was a start, a small step towards understanding. The next Sunday, we gathered at Tony's restaurant again, ready for another cooking class. Emma had just received her first order for her herb-growing kits, and Lucas had posted his first cooking demonstration video, which was gaining popularity. As we entered the kitchen, Tony greeted us with his usual warmth. "Ready to make some magic?" he asked, a smile tugging at his lips. "Always," I replied, my heart light, my children by my side, where they belonged. As the class began, I glanced around the kitchen, at the kids working together, at Tony guiding them, and at the growing sense of community we had created. For the first time in a long while, I realized that while family can be complicated, it's not always blood that binds us. It's the love, the respect, and the shared experiences that truly make a family. Emma and Lucas had found their place, their purpose, and their voice, and so had I. We had built something together that we could be proud of, and for once, I didn't need anyone else's approval. We had everything we needed right here. As the weeks passed, the junior chef program continued to flourish. Emma and Lucas thrived in their new roles, and the family's new tradition of cooking together each weekend became more ingrained in our lives. The pride I felt for them, how they embraced their uniqueness and grew with every lesson, was immeasurable. It was everything I had hoped for them. A space where they could be celebrated for who they were, not for how well they fit into someone else's idea of what they should be. But while we were building something new, the old wounds hadn't healed completely. My mother, despite her message, hadn't really changed. She continued to send flowers, gifts, and the occasional congratulatory text, but the distance remained. She didn't fully understand why I had to pull away, why I had to carve out my own path for Emma and Lucas. And though she had reluctantly accepted our decision, I knew she still clung to her idea of a family that followed her rules, her expectations. One afternoon, about a month after our last conversation, I received a surprise call from her. This time, her voice was softer, less defensive. "Carmela, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and about the kids, and about you. I don't think I understood just how much they needed something different. I'm sorry for not seeing that before." I was taken aback. I didn't know how to respond at first. The words hung in the air, and for a moment it felt like all the years of pain and frustration were crashing together. I had always wanted my mother to see us, to recognize how much we deserved to be loved and celebrated for who we were, without all the conditions and exclusions. "I'm not asking you to change overnight, Mom," I said, my voice steady but soft. "But I appreciate that you're trying. We're creating something better here, something for all of us." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, in a tone that almost broke my heart, she spoke again. "I want to be a part of it, Carmela. I want to be there for you and the kids, to support you the way I should have been doing all along." My heart swelled. I had always known my mother loved us, even if her love came with expectations. But hearing her admit it, hearing her want to make a change, was a breakthrough I hadn't dared to hope for. "Maybe," I began, "we could start small. Come by for a class, see what we're doing and how happy Emma and Lucas are. We could have lunch afterward." There was a brief silence, then a soft reply. "I'd like that. I'd really like that." The following Sunday, my mother arrived at Tony's restaurant. The bright, bustling kitchen was as welcoming as ever, with staff bustling about in their pristine uniforms. Emma and Lucas were already there, wearing their junior chef aprons and showing off their latest culinary creations to the younger kids. The scent of fresh herbs, garlic, and spices filled the air, a symphony of smells that always made me feel like I was in the right place. When my mother walked through the door, she was greeted by Tony's team, who led her to the same table where we had our meals every week. The moment she sat down, Emma and Lucas rushed over, eager to share their excitement. "Grammy!" Lucas shouted, his voice bubbling with joy. "We're making tiramisu today." My mother smiled at him, a small, genuine smile that spoke volumes. Emma, looking up from her herb notebook, smiled too, her eyes twinkling with pride. "Would you like to help?" Emma asked softly, offering her grandmother a seat at the table. I would love to," my mother replied hesitantly, her voice shaky as she glanced around at the lively atmosphere. And so she did. For the first time in years, my mother sat with us at the table working side by side with Emma and Lucas, measuring ingredients and laughing as they all learned to create the perfect tiramisu together. I watched her carefully, seeing the walls slowly crumble, bit by bit. There were no expectations, no judgment, just a quiet acceptance of the moment and the joy of creating something with her grandchildren. By the time we were finished, my mother had not only learned the recipe, but had also shared stories from her own childhood, stories that I had never heard before. And in that quiet kitchen, amid the bustle of cooking and laughter, I could feel something shifting between us. As we sat down to taste the tiramisu they had created together, my mother looked at me with a softness in her eyes. "Carmela," she said, her voice tinged with emotion, "I've been wrong. I've missed so much. I see now that your kids, they have something special, just like Michael's. And maybe I haven't shown you the love you needed." I smiled, finally feeling the relief I had been waiting for. "It's never too late, Mom. You're here now. That's all that matters." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I want to be a part of their world, Carmela. I want to be here for them, for you." And in that moment, I knew. Family wasn't perfect. We didn't always fit into the neat boxes that people expected. But we had found our way. And that was enough. After that day, things between my mother and I began to shift. She started coming to our cooking sessions more often, even taking the time to learn about the herbs Emma had grown, and watching Lucas perfect his culinary techniques. She didn't just sit at the table anymore. She actively participated, and her relationship with Emma and Lucas deepened. They had their own special bond now, one that didn't require perfection or meeting anyone's expectations, but their own. One weekend, after the class had ended, Tony pulled me aside. "I've been thinking about something," he said, a thoughtful look on his face. "With your help, I want to expand the junior chef program. We've had such an incredible response, and I think it could go beyond just one restaurant. I'd love for you to be more involved in the future." I felt a rush of pride swell in me. For the first time, I realized just how far we had come. We had created something that wasn't just about cooking. It was about acceptance, belonging, and seeing the value in everyone, no matter who they were or how they learned. As the days went by, Emma and Lucas continued to thrive. They found their passion, and I found mine. I realized that family wasn't about conforming to someone else's vision. It was about accepting each other as we are. And sometimes, the greatest reward comes not from trying to please everyone, but from creating your own space where you and the ones you love can shine. What do you think about Carmela's journey and her decision to change her life and family dynamics? Do you think her mom truly understood the importance of change? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below.